Okay, boys and girls, we have a guitar here. It needs to be cleaned up a little bit, but it's a Traveler Escape EG-1. These are rehearsal guitars. You can take them around, you can play them. It's headless design. Cool. The issue with it is its built-in headphone amplifier. It has two positions here, on and distortion, but if I just put it on, it makes a really horrible noise in the headphones. I think the camera should be able to hear that. And if I put it on distortion, it pretty much does the same thing. So anytime I get something like this, the first thing we always check in electronics when they're acting dumb is the battery. So we're going to start there. And this has a 9-volt battery. And we'll put the meter on that and see where that gets us. Okay, so our battery checks at 9.2 volts. I don't think that's our problem. So let's pop the cap and see what we got for electronicals. Okay, kids, you can call it dumb luck. Look at how tiny this circuit board is. I mean, it's all little bitty tiny surface mount crap. And this is the kind of stuff that you'd rather vacation in Wuhan, China than... Okay, yes, it's okay to make a COVID-19 joke, people. But when I was just trying to make sure everything was soldered to the board and just touching things with my soldering iron to reheat things, just make sure everything was soldered down. When I touched these two little 10 microfarad capacitors, which are surface mounters, which were sitting here where I have some replacement little caps there that are not surface mount, but they're bodged in there to work. When they got hot with the soldering iron, if I had snapped this thing on before they cooled off, the amp shut up. It quit making that horrible buzzing noise. So that was my target, and I changed those two capacitors, and now everything appears to be working properly. When I turn on my headphones, it doesn't make a crazy sound, and I hear guitar sound. So, hooray. I think we're good. Let's put this back together and get it cleaned up. Okay, so if you were unhappy with how hasty this video is, I get it. I've just got other things I want to move on to. So we fixed the internal workings there with two 10 microfarad capacitors. Now that works. The headphone jack works. I can plug it into my guitar and that or into my guitar amp and that works. And tone knob works. And volume knob works. And I went to do the demo and I realized that the strings were too flat out on the neck. The action at the first fret, which is beautiful now because it's a kind of a 0 fret, one of these headless necks. It was way too low, and strings were just buzzing out like crazy. So had to adjust the truss rod. That seems to have gotten us playable. I've roughed in the tuning, so now we can at least play it. Apparently this active circuit, I can turn it on, and if I flip it all the way to distortion, it actually tries to distortion. Coming through the amplifier, oddly enough, that distortion sounds like some 90s records that I've heard before. But we're ready to move on to our next project, but there it was. This came in with, and these are what, $250 guitars, I think now. They're not big value, but the headphone circuit was just making nothing but death noise, and it was down to 2 capacitors. Circuit board had a copyright of 2007, so that's capacitor plague years, my friends. If you see something from between about 2001 and 2010 and it's acting retarded, those are the times you really go after the capacitors. Everybody loves to go after all the capacitors, but if they're not showing symptoms, you know, pre-80s, anything pre-80s I would say is probably disintegrated. But yeah, that 2000 to 2010 era. Anyway, Traveler Guitar Escape EG-1 now fixed. On to the next project.